if I were to look at a dictionary definition, yeah, just to make sure that we are absolutely on the same platform here, I found this particular definition by Merriam-Webster interesting because it speaks about freedom from pride or arrogance. So I thought it was interesting the word freedom appeared in this definition because it speaks about, it's not just sometimes people can suppress the 好恋ness, right? Yeah, in order to not be appear 好恋, then I just speak humbly, yeah. But inside there sometimes can be that spirit of pride even, yeah. And then we see the situation and then we respond accordingly. But I think the definition here is interesting because it speaks of that freedom, not even from that sense of suppressed 好恋ness. Okay, it's a free. You're not even encumbered by that sense of pride or arrogance at all. Yeah. So, but that's what the Bible tells us. Maybe more importantly for this morning's workshop, we want to ask what Bible. That's what the dictionary tells us. But this morning's workshop, we want to ask, what does the Bible tell us about humility? And these are some thoughts I have, and I'm open to hearing from you in the chats as well as in the breakout groups later. What your thoughts are. The first reflection I have is that humility is an intentional posture. What do I mean by that? If you look at this verse that pops out, therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourself with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Colossians 3:12. Clothe yourself. I highlighted the word clothe yourself there. Because it's an intentional putting on. This morning I woke up wearing this orange church t-shirt, right? Yeah. I had to put it on. Yeah, I didn't stretch out my arms and then the shirt somehow just fall on me like a second skin like that. It doesn't work like that, right? I'm sure, not I'm sure, I know that when we wake up in the morning, change out of our sleeping clothes to go to work or to school or church or whatever, you have to put on, intentionally put on, clothe yourself. So there's an intentionality here. Yeah, even as we when we speak about humility and the other attributes that you see on screen, is an intentional putting on of humility. So that's the first reflection I have. There is an intentional posture. The second reflection is that it is a heart attitude. And again, what do I mean by that? So when we look at how the Greek origin of the word humility, I'm not going to try to pronounce that word, yeah. I think I will get it wrong, or yeah, it looks like some Japanese food. But anyway, yeah, that word down there, that it translates to lowliness of mind. And I found it really interesting when you look at the meaning of the word humility. In Greek, it speaks of lowliness of mind. Okay, I get the lowliness part, but it's lowliness of mind.
Mind, yes.
Yes, and it goes back to the point earlier that it is the mind that is demonstrating humility. Yeah, it is not the outward appearance. It's not what I'm saying, but it is the mind. Of course, how I behave and what I say is a reflection of what I'm thinking about. But we also know, like I said earlier, sometimes we can still be humble, inverted commas, in how we say and how we behave, but in our mind it's still that 好恋ness can it's like imagine I imagine supposing my kid did very well in exams, and then sometimes parents compare, and then, oh no lah, my son only 8A1, nothing lah, yeah, nothing, 8A1s only. You know what I mean, right? I am saying nothing, yeah, he not very good lah, yeah. But then there's that 好恋ness in how we trying to say certain things, right? So it's a lowliness of mind here. It's a hard attitude when we speak about humility. Yeah. And very quickly, moving on to the third point, humility means leaning on God. I bring us to this particular verse here. Yeah. For by the grace given me, I say to every one of you, do not think of yourself more highly than you ought to. Okay. Do not think of yourself more highly. And that's the whole idea of humility there. If we don't think of ourselves more highly, then think of ourselves how? Think of ourselves with sober judgment. That means with clarity of mind, with realistic expectations of ourselves, with objectivity. That means not overinflating ourselves. And why do we do all this? Because it is in accordance with the faith God has distributed to you.
And people, I think a lot of people, when they were sharing about their thinking of humility, this actually came up a lot. Others before self.
Yeah. Right, exactly. That's what the whole idea of humility is, seeing others as above ourselves, right? And in accordance with the faith God has distributed. What does this mean here? When you look at the phrase, the entire verse there, yeah, it tells us that God has called us for, certain taskings, certain giftings, certain, roles, and He has empowered us and gifted us in accordance to perform some of those things. The danger when we are not clear-eyed and not sober and not objective in how we are assessing ourselves is that we overinflate, and then we do more than what we think we should be doing or are able to do. Yeah, I point us to the whole idea of the salvation of Christ to seal in what I'm trying to say here. God has said, and it's very clear, when with Christ dying on the cross, it's done. The work is finished. But if we think ourselves, I need to work for it, I need to do more, I need to exercise, to earn some of this, to earn this salvation, then we are not sober. We are not exercising that faith, but we are thinking I can do more. So the focus becomes displaced on, instead of focusing on the finished work of Christ on the cross, to ourselves and what I can do and what I can do more. Yeah, and then we are not relying on Christ anymore. I hope that does that make sense? Yeah. Okay, so if I could summarize this segment here, because there are two parts to humility and integrity, so maybe going a little bit fast. But this point here is this was a verse that was shared at last night's plenary, right? Humility, the guiding verse in the Bible is do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. In other words, not out of haulianness lah, huh? Okay, but in humility, value others above yourself. And I think so many of you said that in the chat, value others above selves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you looking to the interests of the others. So that is a very lofty sounding, I might say lofty sounding, but what really does it mean to you? How do you do something like this? This is something that we will discuss later in the work, the breakout groups lah. But I can imagine a couple of things already, when we are talking about how we relate to each other in church. That's easy. I think when we talk about relating to each other is church, that's the easy part. If I can be absolutely honest here, sometimes the question of the challenge is when we relate to our spouse. Correct? Right? Yeah. Or if we relate to our children and then our children is pointing out something that I said or did wrong, then that becomes a different challenge altogether, right? You get what I mean? Or if I am at work and I see my younger colleagues and, then that's a different thing. How we exercise humility, that's a different challenge altogether. How about our domestic helpers? How about the people who serve us in the hawker centers or in the food courts? Then that's a different challenge altogether, isn't it? Yeah. So church is easy. Yeah, church is easy mode, but challenge mode is out there. Okay, and some of the things I can imagine is how can we be open to feedback when people are feedbacking. Is that a word? Feedbacking. Okay, feeding back to us. Some of the things that we need. How open are we to that? How humble are we to be open to that? How quick are we to apologize if we make a mistake? If our children point out certain things that we said and did are not in alignment, how quick are we to accept that, apologize for our mistakes? How quick are we to listen before we speak? So these are some things, and I'm sure in a breakout group later, you would have more ideas about some of these things. Yeah. Anything you want to add, Walter?
No, I had a couple of reflections. I think the first one is that humility, very much like integrity, is a muscle.
Yeah.
You got to practice it to get stronger at it. I think that's the first thing. The second thing I was thinking about was I would like to go into the Bible to see examples of humility. So if I just type into the chat, I type into Google, for example, humble people in the Bible, actually the people who turned out to be the most humble were A, the people who were most used by God. B, they tend to be actually the most senior leaders in the Bible. So you're talking about the Davids of the world, you're talking about the Moses of the world. So I think there's even a Bible verse that says, like, I think Moses was meek by nature, actually. And then you're talking about the Pauls of the world. So these are people who were so powerfully used. And so what does it mean for us as well? And what does it mean even in various places of leadership, so either at work, at home, in church, whatever, those are the people who should be the most humble in some sense. So that was my reflection as well.
Thanks for that. Yeah, indeed. I think Christ himself was very humble. Yeah, he was a man of God. Okay, I don't know how else, what other label, that expresses that the level, the stature that he had. He could turn water to wine. He could raise the dead, heal the sick. But I don't think he was. I don't think there's any Bible verse that says he was Haolian. Okay, yeah. So that's a good reflection there, Walter. Thanks. Okay, so we'll discuss more in the breakout groups. Yeah, and I'll go to the next topic on integrity. Yeah. Now let's talk about integrity. We spoke about humility earlier, but now integrity. What does the opposite of integrity look like? Again, in the chat down there, just very quickly, 2 words, 3 words, 3 sentences, 500-word essay. Yeah, what's the opposite of integrity look like to you? Dishonesty. Yeah. So what does the opposite of integrity look like to you, Walter?
I think doing what's convenient and wrong.
Doing what's convenient and wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's something that there is a lot of. Yeah, so I really like Felicia's answer. Like, everything is great, and I do feel that in days like these, in the society that we live in, seems to be pushing us to that everything is great.
Yeah.
Right.
Indeed.
That's something that's really interesting. Right.
Putting on a mask. Yeah. But every day nowadays, every day we also wear masks. Jamie, what is that? A different mask. Sorry. Yeah. Not having a stand, not truthful, not and hypocrisy. So these are all. So we seem to have converged on some ideas of what the opposite of integrity, and by saying that what integrity means also. Yeah. So thanks for that. So integrity, again, very quick dictionary, definition. It speaks of incorruptibility and completeness. And certainly, when we speak about this, certain Bible giants come to mind. Yeah, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. That's the dictionary. Again, what does the Bible tell us? And I seem to, as I was reflecting on this, it came across to me that integrity is also an intentional posture, just like humility is intentional. And why do I say that? I show you this picture. Does this picture look familiar to any of you here? Walter, have you seen this place before?
In our preparation, you have shown it to me once, but I never had the privilege to see that in my life yet. I hope.
Yeah. Okay. These are the beaches of Sentosa, right? No lah. Okay, not Sentosa. This is the Judean desert. Judean desert is the place where Jesus was in the desert for 40 days and 40 nights. And during this period of time, he was tempted. He was tempted by the devil, to throw himself off the cliff, to turn stone to bread, and he was promised all the cities. Jesus had, could he do that? Could he turn the stone to bread? Of course he could. The devil knows. Could he jump off the cliff and know that the angels will come and lift him up? Of course, Jesus could do that, and the angels would have done that, but he didn't, because Jesus was very clear. He had a clear mission. His mission is not to exercise all these things, out of convenience. His clear intention is to live a sinless life, right? So that he can be that divine exchange. And it was an intentional posture that he had to adopt. despite tempted for 40 days and 40 nights. You look at this, there's no food anywhere. There's no Subway or, in this picture, there's no stuffed burrito for you to order. There is just that, a desert for 40 days and 40 nights. Yeah. And I think Jesus is a consummate example of the intentional posture here of incorruptibility and completeness. The second point I put it there is a reminder to us that integrity does not mean sinless perfection, because we look at some of those, Victoria mentioned roti prata. I'm not sure what that means in the chat. Yeah, but if you look at some of the comments in the chat, it speaks about incorruptibility, moral standards, being true. Yeah, those seem to be very, very high standards, very, very high standards, bound to fail. Yeah, because human nature, we it's very hard for us to achieve those standards. But if you look at the Bible, and if you look at some of those giants in the Bible, Noah, we know the Bible describes him in Genesis, start of Genesis 6:9. He was righteous and blameless, and that's why he was selected and asked to build the ark and all that. But we know towards the end, he sinned. He was drunk. He was found to be drunk and naked. And then the chapter ends on a slightly sour note for Noah. We look at the book of Job. First verse, he was described as blameless, but towards the end, he himself said that he needed repentance. What happened, from first verse all the way to the end, was it a general decline? No. Yeah. But I think if we look at the giants in Bible of, righteousness and blamelessness, Noah and Job, among others, it doesn't mean that just because they were righteous and blameless, they don't sin. They make mistakes. Why? Because they're human. All of us are human. We will make mistakes along the way. Yeah. And it's important that when we recognize, despite them making some of these mistakes, we recognize Noah and Job as giants of integrity in the Bible. Isn't that? Yeah. And that leads us to the third point, that integrity is also about leaning on God. Because if we rely on our human nature, we cannot make it. Yeah. We rely on our own and also the pressures and forces around us. Sometimes it's really hard at the workplace, when we want a good deal, when it's really hard to maintain those high standards of integrity. But God here in the Bible, God is challenging us. Yeah, for even if you suffer for doing what is right, in other words, the integrity part of it, God will reward you. Okay, worship Christ as Lord of your life. Let Him be your anchor. Let Him be your role model. Let Him be your lighthouse that we look towards. Yeah, and even if you find it so hard because that's human nature, that is not the end of the story here. Yeah, as long as we rely on Christ and trust in His providence and goodness for us. So these are some of my reflections about integrity. Anything that you might want to add, Walter?
No, fully agree. I think the other thing I was thinking about was whenever I think about integrity and whenever I think about it in the Bible, I always think of men of integrity. So actually, I made some effort last night to look at like women of integrity. So
all right. Yeah.
Like for example, the Ruths of the world.
Yeah.
Like Abigail, and even the midwives during the time of Egypt, and they were trying to kill all the Israel, the Jewish boys, and I think that they were hiding him because they feared the Lord. And integrity for me, actually, that's my learnings, the fear of the Lord.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah. So again, this verse was shared last night the plenary. Yeah, the guiding verse for integrity. Let your yes be a yes and your no be a no. Anything more than that, anything other than that is from the evil one. Really, really, again, really, really lofty, really, really high standards to maintain, but maybe the question again is, what does it mean for me? What does it mean for my day-to-day? What does it mean when I'm interacting with others in church? Sometimes, if I can even put it out there, sometimes how do we interact with each other, exercising humility and integrity with our fellow believers, with our service providers, with our ushers, for example. Yeah, okay. I can think of 2 or 3. For instance, to demonstrate integrity, speaking the truth, but speaking the truth in love. Speaking honestly with one another, even though that may be super challenging. Yeah, keeping our word, honoring our vows, yeah, and doing things with pure. So these are pure motives. So these are some examples. And again, I imagine that in the breakout groups, there will be opportunities for us to share what else that we think we can exercise more of. Yeah. So that's where we come to the breakout groups. The general question is, how can I exercise humility and integrity? And the reason why we have these breakout groups is because, in a room full of, people, there is collective wisdom. Whatever we are sharing is my reflection, Walter's reflection as well. But all of you have your own reflections. All of you have your own journeys and experiences. Being in relationships, in communities, in groups, you might have said or done or thought certain things. And maybe you have your own experiences to share, and that's why we want to hear. Yeah. So what we'll do is we'll break you up into your breakout groups. Some of you are have agreed to help facilitate. So I really appreciate that you just help to get the conversation going. The group will be about 15 minutes or so. Yeah, and then we'll come back to this group again, and then we have a summary before we take a break, and then we go on to the plenary again. I think the reflection is when we talk about humbleness or humility in church or as a value for the church, it's not about we being passive. It doesn't mean that we don't take a stand. It doesn't mean that we are not assertive, and then people will take advantage of it. I don't think that's the spirit behind what we say about humility and integrity. I think we just want to caution that it's not about being very, insistent on what we think is right or the way to do certain things. I think it's a marriage of both humility and integrity coming together. Yeah, I was talking about it. It doesn't mean that we become weak or taken advantage of, or that we insist on our way of doing things and the only way. I think even if when we're exercising humility and integrity, even in the most difficult of circumstances, yeah, I think that should be encouraged by what the Bible tells us, what God tells us. God doesn't shortchange us. God doesn't put us in challenging situations to make it difficult for us just for the sake of being difficult. Yeah, but I think if we all know Father God, he puts us in certain situations to stretch us, not just ourselves, but the people that we interact with. Yeah, and the verses here are just gentle reminders. Blessed are the poor in spirit, one of the beatitudes. Theirs is the kingdom of heaven. How more clear is that, right? Yeah. Or for those who exalt themselves will be humbled, but those who humble themselves will be lifted up, will be exalted. Keep your conscience clear. Okay, and then when you are clear, and then when people speak against you, they will be ashamed. They themselves paiseh, because they see that you are doing what is right, because you are a child of God. I put these verses here. It's not to say that we are humble and we are upright so that we gain all these things. Yeah, it's not that we are hankering for these rewards, but our humility and our expression of integrity is a reflection of, is a response, because God has already loved us, God has already blessed us, God has asked things, God has already, in all the ways that He has blessed us, we are responding in exercising these things so that people can see, so that people can, so that we can be that beacon to show people around us, look, that is what being a Christian, Christ follower is all about. Yeah. Okay. I will bring us to the summary slide now. I started out by speaking about, the relationship highway and how integrity and humility come together. It's about exercising grace and truth here, when we talk about relationships with each other, with our spouses, children, servers, service people in church, at work, in subordinates, even our bosses, even sometimes. Yeah. It's not that when we have integrity, we love to speak the truth, or everything also speak the truth. It's not that we can't look at integrity alone. We have to look at integrity together with humility. That when we speak the truth, we are speaking the truth in love, right? And that's the intermarriage. That's the marriage between grace or humility and truth or integrity. We don't speak the truth. It's not that we love to speak the truth, but we speak the truth in love. The second point is to just, what I mentioned earlier, that when we talk about humility and integrity, is intentional exercise. You have to intentionally put it on. We have to intentionally clothe ourselves. Yeah, it sometimes isn't human nature. Sometimes it's difficult. Actually, it's really very difficult when people the people that are most important to us, and then we want to exercise some of these things. It's really very difficult, but it's an intentional process. And the third point I just want to highlight, and don't forget to lean on God, lean on God's giftings, lean on or giftings for you, or blessings for you, taskings for you, right? And then use that as your anchor, as your lighthouse to guide you. Yeah. So I think I've come almost to the end of. Walter, do you have anything else that you would like to add at this juncture?
I think, like I said at the start, I love the word that you use, exercise humility and integrity, because it's like, you're building a muscle. I think that's one thing that I'm taking away. And leaning on God, I think that is absolutely the most critical, because with our own efforts, it's impossible to be humble and to live a life of integrity.
Yeah.
So leaning on God is the fundamental, critical sort of like success factor that we need to focus on. Through Him, only that's the only way that we can do that.
Yeah. So if this is a muscle, I think church is the gym.
Now gym closed, okay, bro. Now gym.
Okay, sorry. As long as we wear masks, but not the mask of a falsehood. Okay. Yeah, but church is the gym, right, for us to exercise, because we said that we are saying that church is actually the easiest place to exercise some of these things. Everybody is in a mental state of humility and integrity. Let's exercise that. Starting with the church, and then we venture into the more challenging areas of family and work and all that.